I think we're all very much aware of what's been happening over the past few years, certainly very recently. And there is the old adage of you're only as strong as your weakest link is ringing true. And there's been so many examples of third-party supplier breach. We see them on a daily basis. You may not be the cause of the breach, but rather a careless supplier may be the ultimate cause, but you will bear the brunt of the negative impact. This is all about reputation management. We will discuss examples of recent third-party attacks, why they are being targeted, and what risk do these attacks pose to you. We will also be demonstrating a simple SaaS platform from Black Kite. It is a unique and cost-effective way to rapidly assess the weaknesses associated with your suppliers and assign a score across three main areas: financial risk, technical risk, and compliance risk. And this process does not touch the target environment, so no agents or appliances are installed whatsoever. The platform shows savings of up to 85% against traditional TPRM's questionnaires and a return on investment of less than 50 days, while all the time reducing your risk and exposure and improving your supplier's security posture. The agenda we will go through today will go about, we all know about the attacks on third parties, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the traditional approaches that we've all been using, which are very, very time consuming and not 100% accurate. The simple way to do this, the results that we can get from this, we'll walk you through a demonstration which Steve will go through. We'll talk about how we can reduce those risks for you, and then talk about next steps should you wish to take this further. So Steve, no further ado, I'll pass it over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Andy, and welcome everyone to this webinar hosted obviously by DataShield. And thanks again, Andy, for covering off the agenda, etc. So let's begin. As Andy said, we all kind of know about the types of attacks that are happening against businesses through their third-party suppliers. We've just put a few companies up here, that have been recently attacked through their third-party suppliers. But if you look at the sort of Ponemon Institute research out there, that estimate around about 59% of organisations will suffer some form of attack through their third-party supplier. And the average cost of any attack on an organisation, as done again by Ponemon and the IBM cost of data breach, is around about 5.5 million. But when a third party is involved in that, that can increase it by a further 152,000. So the cost of being attacked through one of your third-party suppliers has real monetary costs associated with it. And if you look at the list that we've got here, and we could have included many, many more. The interesting ones are things like, Tesla, SpaceX, and Boeing. They was hit by one of their small engineering companies, a company called Visa, and they was basically then held to ransom for things like intellectual property. And they work in an incredibly complex area where their IP, their reputation, their brand, etc., is incredibly important to that. And they was just hit by a small engineering company. If you look at Marriott, they was actually hit twice. It wasn't necessarily a third party on them, but in essence it was. It was actually one of their franchisees, and they was actually hit twice through there. Obviously, we've all seen in the press recently around sort of SolarWinds, but there are other many, many examples. Now Pensions, for instance, was hit and had an impact on a lot of the major banks within the UK. Even Microsoft were hit through an unnamed partner that manages their Azure licensing platform. British Airways fined massive fines for GDPR breaches due to a leak. And one of the most recent ones is obviously Cassia, where hundreds of customers, mainly MSPs, but also some direct customers as well, were affected through attacks through the Cassia. And there's lots and lots of more examples of this that are just hitting the press constantly. As Andy pointed out, what the bad actors are doing is looking for their perceived weaker links within the supply chain. They know that these larger organizations deal with thousands of suppliers, have many, many relationships. They're sharing intellectual property, they're sharing personal identifiable information, contracts, confidential information. And they know that if they can get through a third-party supplier that might not necessarily have the budgets, the infrastructure, they might not have a security operations center, all the necessary technology to protect them, but they still pose a massive risk to the organization that deals with these types of third-party suppliers. But who's actually sort of responsible for managing the risks within an organization? There's lots and lots of departments, and we could have listed virtually everyone involved from this, from supplier management people, procurement, security, the governance, compliance, risk management, finance, legal. The list goes on and on. Obviously, senior management needs to be involved with these aspects to make sure that the risk profile or the risk appetite for an organization is acceptable through its third-party suppliers. And obviously, the board get involved. You know, all the CEO, the CISO, the chief data officer, it doesn't really matter, they're all involved in this. And this costs organizations immense amounts of time, money, and effort in determining what risks their third-party suppliers pose to them. The risks that if they share data, they share information, and more importantly, if they share infrastructure with that particular supplier or partner, what impact could it have on them? What would be the financial impact to that organization? How secure is my supplier around their IT cybersecurity posture? How do they meet the frameworks required from me as a business? Do they meet GDPR? What about ISO 27001, HIPAA, NIST, PCI DSS? How do these organizations meet those governance frameworks, and can they adhere to them? So what's traditionally done? As Andy said, you know, we're talking around about less than 50 days for a complete return on investment on this platform, and 87% saving against traditional questionnaires. Now, I've worked on both sides of the fence. I've been working for vendors and working for large corporates where we're asking our suppliers to fill in questionnaires. Now, these are point in time because it's only where they are now in their cybersecurity or their compliance posture, but they're aspirational at best. If one of your suppliers wants to do business with you, they are not necessarily going to tell you everything that is potentially a weak spot within their security posture. So it's aspirational at best. And then what do you do once you've got all these questionnaires back? You've got this information, you've involved all the departments that we spoke around earlier. Risk management's been involved, IT have been involved, helping develop the questionnaires. You might have looked at different frameworks, NIST, etc., or MITRE ATT&CK framework. You might have looked at these and generated lots of questionnaires. You get all this information back, but how do you then determine what risk they pose to you and what the financial impact could be? And it often requires lengthy analyst reviews of the data and the information. And then it's a continuous ongoing, because it's point in time, you're then having to repeat the questionnaires. Has anything changed this month? Has anything changed this week? And as we know, an organization's security posture changes all the time. New weaknesses are identified within the supply chain, within their patch management, within applications being launched. How do you actually know what risk they pose to you from a questionnaire, whether that's a spreadsheet based or it's a Word or however you're actually getting that information back? You could look at outsourcing, and we've spoken to a lot of organizations that do outsource. But often they just use automated questionnaires to automate the process of collecting this aspirational and pointing data time information. And again, out of date as soon as it's completed. What if their security posture does change? How do you get notified of that? How do you get an alert that one of your supplier's security has just reduced, that they're more at risk? They're more at risk from a ransomware attack or a data breach. And there's obviously lots of other tools and services out there on the market. But the platform I'm going to show you shortly is the only platform on the market that looks at the three key elements that Andy mentioned at the top of the webinar. What is the financial impact to you if that supplier is breached? What could it potentially cost you? How do you know if you've got sufficient cyber insurance cover to cover you against that? What is their compliance level across multiple frameworks? And again, what are the technical risks with that organization? How is their patch management? Have they had credentials theft? Are there nearby domains being registered that could potentially be used for a CEO impersonation attack on us, or a CEO fraud attack? You know, change my bank details, please. And it looks like it's come from the right person, but it's a single character out or a couple of characters out of their domain name. But what they won't also do is show you how susceptible that organization, that supplier or partner or franchisee or associate company you work with, or maybe even just a different division but has their own autonomy, how susceptible they are to a ransomware attack in a simple graphical way that enables you to make business decisions based on what score that particular organization has. And again, they're often just automated questionnaires. They might have researched the top 500 organizations or suppliers out there, the very large IT infrastructures, the very large legal firms, but the rest of them are often done through questionnaires. So the platform that I'll cover and show you in a little while will be able to give you an 80% saving against these traditional methods of the way you work. And if you based it on a large organization that wanted to have, say, 200 critical suppliers that they want to get a continuous cyber risk assessment annually, and maybe 2,000 other suppliers that are very important to them, they maybe share information with them, but they just want to do a 60-day assessment once a year or twice a year, you're talking around about £4 million worth of saving against traditional costs, because the average cost of producing a questionnaire, following it up, chasing it through, analysing it, from the CISO report that Black Kite produced, is roughly £2,100. So you can start, if you've got hundreds of suppliers, the costs involved to you in time, money, and effort for something that is aspirational at best, requires lots of additional work, or is outsourced and is not giving you that true view, can be incredibly expensive. And what we're about to show you will, I think, give you an idea of what you can do with the platform and how simple and easy it is to use. Now, to give you a quick sort of overview of the platform, it's designed to be incredibly quick. It's incredibly scalable and has a complete global footprint. All the platform requires is the domain name of your supplier, .com, .co, .uk, .nz, .sa, whatever it is. That's all it is. You can import multiple suppliers into the platform, and the platform is completely scalable. Up to 10,000 new suppliers per day can be inputted into the platform. And it's incredibly quick in terms of the time to value. No longer waiting for weeks, months to get information back on questionnaires. You'll get the initial results in minutes, not days, weeks, and months. It doesn't touch the supplier's infrastructure. You don't need their permission from the supplier to run the assessment against them. It's using open source intelligence tools, a variety of different internet feeds and subscriptions into threat intelligence services that gives you that view of how secure that supplier is. But you don't need their permission. You don't need to touch their environment. We're not putting agents on their environment to do this. This is all non-intrusive. It gives you that complete picture that we spoke around earlier, their technical risk, the compliance risk, and the financial impact, as well as a whole host of other information, such as how likely they are to be breached in a data attack, how susceptible they are to a ransomware attack. The platform can be licensed in two ways, actually in three ways, and I'll cover the third way shortly. The main two ways is a 60-day license for those important but not necessarily critical suppliers. Or there's an annual license for those critical suppliers that might be directly connected into your infrastructure, that you might share incredibly sensitive and confidential information with, that you want that continuous risk assessment of them on an ongoing basis for a year. So there's different options depending upon your whole third-party risk management strategy and how you as a business determine each supplier's criticality to you is. And it's very simple to use the platform. You just compile a list of your suppliers, whether that's in an Excel format or in a Word format, and all it is the domain names. You put those domain names into the platform. Again, within minutes, you start to get the initial results. Within a couple of hours, you've got the full profile of that particular organization for technical risk, compliance, and the financial impact to you if they're breached. You then obviously get access to those results. So you can start to sort them and rank them by who is the most riskiest, who is above the threshold for my comfort in terms of dealing with that organization. And then you can either share the platform with that particular supplier, or we have developed a process called RAMP, which is our rapid assessment and monitoring process, which takes away the overhead of helping your suppliers increase their cybersecurity posture, but ultimately reducing the risk to you as a business. And I'll cover what the RAMP process is shortly. So it's incredibly quick. It's very simple. Import the suppliers, get access to the data, sort them into the areas that you're unhappy with, and then start flagging those particular suppliers for an action. Whether action is we no longer do business with them, or the action is we work with that supplier because they're important to us to help them improve their cybersecurity posture. You can get a multitude of results, and I'll show you the platform shortly. You can get, it's all role-based, so you can get a summary view across your entire supply chain. You know, what is the cumulative financial risk to us? What is the average technical score? What is the average financial score? If you're a CFO, you can drill down into financial impact dashboards. If you're the CTO or CISO, you can then start getting technical dashboards, and then you can drill down into detail on each and every supplier that you've got and you've imported into the platform. What it isn't, it's not a black box solution that hides how everything's done. It's incredibly easy to understand technical ratings. The analogy I always use is very similar to sort of an Experian rating, and I'll cover what they are shortly. Obviously, it's giving you that financial impact and the full compliance views, and it enables you to really start making informed business decisions on how you actually deal with that supplier or partner. It starts giving you the ability to make decisions based on information rather than based on aspirational data that a supplier has given to you. What it also does, it's got a lot of automation built into the platform. It will generate improvement reports for each supplier that you can share with them, or we'll cover off as part of our RAMP process, which I'll cover on the sort of next couple of slides. You can also look at the cross correlation around compliance. So for instance, if the organization has just achieved, your supplier has just got ISO 27001, import their information and data security policies into the platform, and it will dynamically alter their score in real time for ISO 27001. But as you probably know, certain elements of ISO 27001 also apply to GDPR, CMMC, HIPAA, NIST, PCI DSS. So it will cross-correlate and show the improvement in their areas around there. So rather than asking suppliers to fill in questionnaires, you can ask them to send you their ISO 27001 information, maybe import their PCI DSS gap analysis, and it will dynamically alter their compliance scores to show you a true representation of how compliant they are as a business. What we also don't want you to do is sit in front of the platform every day going, oh, what's changed on my suppliers? Has somebody been breached? Have they had a credentials theft? Have they got servers that are no longer patched at the correct levels? So built into the platform is a full alerting system. It directly integrates into ServiceNow, or there's a full API. So if you've got different service management platforms and ticketing systems, you can import into there. What it will also do is has alerting in there. So for instance, if somebody's cybersecurity posture changes, or they have a breach from one of your suppliers' breach, you can get an alert sent to you straight away. So that rather than reading about it in the press, seeing it in the news, you'll be pre-armed and pre-warned. And then you can make the decision, do you sever the link with that particular supplier, or do you try and work with them to improve their cybersecurity? As I said, the results are incredibly simple. Uses a letter grading score. A grade A, I won't go through all of these, but a grade A, for instance, really needs to be a state-sponsored hack to be able to get through that organization's defenses. And then B, incredibly competent hackers, and going down and down into somebody that can just do scripts. It gives you that very simple view. What is my supplier's cyber rating? What is their financial impact to me if they are breached? And what is the compliance rating of that organization? How compliant are they against the 14 different frameworks that we support out of the box? What I'm going to do now is go through the demonstration, but I always like to sort of preempt this. I am not a technical person. What I wanted to do is demonstrate this myself rather than get one of our technical people involved, to show you that you don't have to be an incredible, like an IT security professional to do this. The whole idea behind the platform is its simplicity, the way it presents the results, how intuitive the platform is and how easy it is to use, which means people within organizations, whether they're in security, whether they're in procurement, whether they're in legal or financial, can still get access to the information and drive the platform and get information around their suppliers. So let me just switch screens and I will come on to the demonstration. Bear with me 1 second, please. So here we have the platform. This is the summary view. So let's imagine I'm a CISO within an organization. I'm in charge of managing the risk across all of my third-party suppliers, and I've imported 26 of my key suppliers into the platform. What I've also done is I've created 3 separate ecosystems. And in essence, an ecosystem to us is just a bucket. How you put those suppliers into an ecosystem. Some of our customers will do multiple ecosystems, some will just bundle them all together. And an ecosystem might be critical suppliers, important suppliers, legal suppliers, financial, however you want to do it, we can set it up so that you can create as many ecosystems as you want. The benefits around that is you can start looking at the risk based on groups. What is the cumulative risk across a particular ecosystem, say my critical suppliers that are directly connected to my infrastructure? What is the average weighted score across them? What is the total financial risk across them? What is the average compliance? So this is kind of like a summary view. So it will show you the average weighted score, what the cumulative financial risk is for that organization, and what the average compliance is. Looks at the average, how susceptible they are to a ransomware attack. We've got 0.42, which is 42%. Shows where my vendors are worldwide. And you can zoom into this. I've got 14 in South Africa. I've got Australia, New Zealand, Netherlands, UK, US and Canada. But wherever your suppliers are, all we need is their domain name. Because what it does, it looks up the supplier, the domain name, it will add them into the correct industry, whether they're financial services supplier, IT supplier, legal, financial, whatever it might be. You can look at the risk trends how your business is going. How is your financial impact increased over time? Now that might be purely because you've added more suppliers into the platform, or it might be that the risks have actually increased for that supply chain. You've got a very nice sort of simple 3D navigation here where you can start to drill down into looking at different organizations. I can look at my free risk set scans that we've done here for organizations, look at their technical score, shop right there. Let's have a quick look at them, 86, 44,000, and their compliance rating of 96%. So you can really start to sort of get a very simple 3D navigation across the risks within your supply chain. Obviously, you can look at how it's distributed. So I've got 8 as a grade A, state-sponsored hacker, grade B, very serious hackers, and grade C, sort of average, competent hacker could probably get into their environment. And I've only got 1 supplier in there out of these 26. But if you've got thousands of suppliers, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you've got 50 suppliers or whether you've got 50,000 suppliers. You'll still get the same graphical interface. What you can also do is look at different dashboards. So obviously this is a view from a summary. So this is what probably the CISO will look at, but you might want to go into a financial impact. So you're now a CFO, finance director. You want to look at more things that are more important to you. How is your suppliers based on their risk to you distributed? How is their technical score versus their financial impact? You can start to go around each one of these and look at individual information, look at the risk heat map, look at them by industry. So I've got photo finishing there, they take up quite a few, other services, instruments, seasoning and dressing manufacturer. So we've determined what vertical they're in. You can start to look at your risks from a financial point of view based on the industry that is actually there. And there's obviously a technical dashboard as well. And any element that you've seen here, you can also create your own custom dashboards. So you can create a dashboard that is more relative to how you work as a business. You might want some financial elements in there. You might want the vendors by distribution list, the average technical score, or you might want a separate one for an individual ecosystem, so that you can then save each one of these reports, because every report you can save to PDF and then include it in senior management reports, board reports, etc., or just send over to the particular supplier if you want to send it to them. So this is a technical dashboard here. So you can start looking at the technical. We can look at the heat map for vulnerability. So we know we've got 149 critical problems within this particular supply chain. You can start to look at the companies and all their technical scores and lots of different technical areas. But like I said, I'm not a technical person. But what I want to do is be able to easily and quickly find out which ones of my suppliers could potentially cause my company a challenge, that could potentially be breached, that could potentially suffer a ransomware attack. So the easiest and quickest way to do that is just to have a quick look at the sorting list and what sort of fields you can sort them on. You can filter the results by a whole host of different areas, whether that be their vertical, the geography, however you actually want to filter it. But here we've just got all the complete company list. Let me just expand this. So we've got all the company list here. Well, obviously, we've got quite a few organizations in South Africa. We've got some US companies, a couple of UK companies there, some New Zealand, UK, Canada. So it knows where they are. The platform knows from their domain name where that company is registered. It knows what their vertical is. So it can start to really sort around that. And here you can see some of my ecosystems. So I can quickly and easily, I've got all my suppliers here. I can go, right, who has the worst financial impact to me? We've got Reflex Solutions there, AquaAid over in the UK, 392,000, 130,000. I'll drill down how that's calculated shortly. So I can easily and quickly sort, well, that's too high a risk appetite for me. Or you might want to look at the RSI, which is the Ransomware Susceptibility Index, which is to look at who is most likely to be hit by a ransomware attack. And so then you can start to flag those particular suppliers for action. Now, that action purely might be an internal thing. They're then out of contract with you because maybe within your contracts you build in that you must have a certain levels of cybersecurity. Maybe that they've gone, their technical score isn't high enough for your risk appetite. We can work with you to help you determine whether it's a B, whether it's a C, whether it's the financial element, or whether it's their compliance rating. See, I, as a non-technical person, can quickly come onto the platform, sort my suppliers and go, I'm not happy that the first company at the top of the list there has a potential nearly 82% chance of being hit by a ransomware attack. Now, there are a couple of ways you can then take action on this. The first and probably the easiest way is to ask us to ramp that particular supplier. And what we do is you just notify us, and it's a free of charge service for every licensed vendor that you've got in the platform. So every domain that you've purchased, whether it's a 60-day or an annual, you go, right, Steve, would you please ramp that supplier? What we do is we make contact with that supplier. We send them a whole list of remediation reports and information, which I'll show you shortly, and we work with them to help them improve their cybersecurity. We won't do the work as in we won't go in and patch their servers. Well, we will if they want us to under contract, but typically we supply them with the information that will enable that supplier to improve his cybersecurity, but ultimately reduce the risk to you as an organization. And we can do that in a variety of different ways. And the ramp process, like I say, is free of charge. It's included within the licenses, and it takes away that overhead from you of reducing the risks within your supply chain. However, there is another way, a simple way. So if we just click on hit this organization, we might say, we're not happy with the risk appetite of this particular supplier. Their ransomware is too high. So what you can do is you can very quickly share it with the vendor. You can go, I will share this report with the vendor. You type in their name, their email address, telephone number, and you hit share. They will then get a link to access the platform and get access to all the technical information that it will give them on how they can improve their cybersecurity or improve their compliance posture, and ultimately reduce the financial risk to you as an organization. You can also grant them admin privileges. And granting them admin privileges means that they can go and update the information within the platform to show that they have fixed something. For instance, if we detect they have had a data breach. Now, the organization might have multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, or a password management policy that says we must change our password every week. And we detected a breach and they go, we knew all about it, we've done it. You can mark all of those. They can upload their evidence. So you've got an evidence trail of what they did, and it will dynamically alter their score, which will show an improvement in their cybersecurity and a reduction in the financial risk to you as an organization. Obviously, you only really want to share and grant admin privileges to your key suppliers that you have a long and trusted relationship with. Where there has been upfront, there has been cases where organizations have shared the admin privileges. The supplier's gone in and just marked everything as remediated, and then the score goes really high. And then as the platform is continuously cyber risk assessing them, their score drops down again. Then it goes back up as they change it, and then it goes back down. So you can start to see trends over time if organizations are abusing it. So what I always recommend and what we recommend is only grant admin privileges if it's a trusted supplier who you've been working with for a long while, that you know will not try and abuse the system by marking things as either false positive or remediated when they're not. Because as it's a continuous cyber risk assessment, the platform will identify that those weaknesses within their cybersecurity are still there and will downgrade their score as it changes. And I'll show you how we do that in a short while. So that's one way of doing it, just purely share the platform. But now I've got my sort of procurement hat on. I'm not happy with this. I've quickly navigated through the list of suppliers. I've identified one that I am not very happy with. I can do a variety of different things. Ask us to ramp that supplier, as I've said. I can share access to the platform with them, or I can very quickly create a strategy report unique to that supplier's cybersecurity that we have analysed, that will enable them to improve their cybersecurity posture. So what it's saying here is they're a B plus, 60,000 of financial risk and 78% compliant. What it does, it gives you the improvement strategy. So if it goes, they've got challenges around SSL TLS strengths, they've had some credentials management issues, they've got to sort out some network security, they've got 9 items on patch management, well, 11 actually for the 9 medium and 2 critical, and then they've got some email and DDoS and fraudulent domains that have been registered close to that organization. If they do that, they will get to an A plus, which will give them an increase in their cybersecurity of 10%. They'll decrease the financial risk to me as an organization by nearly 20K, and their compliance will improve by 24%. And what it does, the strategy report then gives them literally a step-by-step guide of how to do it. So that was involved in the crypto DB leak. So you've got that particular one there. If you click on it, it will give you the description, how you remediate it, change passwords at least quarterly, educate your employees, do not use the company credentials for personal use, social media, etc. Pretty basic cybersecurity, good hygiene. Gives you some references there and looks at the common weaknesses and how the score is actually derived. It's using the MITRE classification, so it enables you or the organization to quickly see, here's my remediation report. I've had some credentials leaks. I need to make sure I've sorted that out. And as they go in and update the system and the platform, it will dynamically alter their score and show an improvement, working towards getting them to these figures from these figures as well. So that kind of gives you the sort of how you can work with your suppliers to help them improve their cybersecurity. As I said, work with us and we will do it for you as part of a service, or share access to the platform, or share the remediation report with them. So let's go into a little bit more detail around the sort of technical elements that we're looking at. What we can see here is, because we know the industry, you can start to look at how that organization fares against its industry peers. So you can see they're actually quite high. They're in the very good section. You can also see the sort of spider category of where they fit, the heat map for that company, and then you can start to look at the individual elements that we're monitoring. Now, when I first said how easy it was to implement, all we said we did is put in a single domain name. So let's have a quick look at their digital footprint. So what we're risk assessing them by is their entire digital footprint. All we put in was that company's single URL, a single domain name, and we've determined 312 assets from there. Now, I've seen this. We did a very, very large supplier where we risk assessed them, and they had something like 18,000 assets that was actually identified and then risk assessed against them. They had multiple domain names, thousands of IP addresses, because if you're working with a particular supplier and you might talk to them and say, well, we want you to do pen testing against your public facing services. And they say, oh, well, we've got one IP address. That's all we've got out into the public domain. Once we've ran this assessment of them, we can determine how many that actually is. So in here, we've got 22. So we can look at the different IP addresses of the organization. We can then start to look at the subdomains around that. So here are all the subdomains. We can start to look at the services, their social media, their ASNs, their email, etc. We can start to look even simple things like whereabouts are they distributed in the world. So we know they've got infrastructure in Germany, they've got infrastructure in the US. So from a single domain name, we was able to, for this one organization, we determined they had 312 assets that were part of the risk management assessment that we'd done on them to get that technical score. What you can also do then is drill down into any one of these particular ones if you want to. We can start looking at credentials. Let's have a look at credentials management, one of my favorite ones. Now, luckily, they've not been involved in any leaks in the last 90 days, but there was over 100 leaks. Because I said we're using open source intelligence tools, we're looking out for paid for services, we're looking onto the dark web, we're looking out for web services that will give us information on that organization. So we know that these particular individuals here had information leaked with plain text passwords, hashed passwords, lots of different leaks from a CityDay leak, that we know that person's credentials were involved in that leak. Now, what the platform is not saying is whether that particular user used the same password for his works account as he did when he registered for maybe a Twitter account or a LinkedIn account, for instance. But it's given an indicator that they are having credentials leaked within their organization that needs to be tightened, that needs to be improved. So sending the remediation report will do that. And you can start to go into all different areas. You can look at information disclosure. And again, we don't expect our customers to then spend endless amounts of time going into all this detail that I'm showing you here that we can look at the different findings that we've found around data breach index, around information here that was leaked. We don't particularly, you wouldn't want to be doing that. What you want to be doing is getting us to rank that supplier to help them improve their security, sending them a remediation report, or granting them access into the platform going, please sort out your cybersecurity. We're working with quite a large telco at the moment. We're risk assessing their third-party suppliers, and that's exactly what they're doing. They are sending the remediation report to their supplier and going, we're not happy, come back with evidence that you have fixed this, and show us that we don't need to worry about your credentials management, but show us evidence. Don't just say we have a good credentials management policy. And the platform will dynamically improve their score as they make the improvements to their cybersecurity. They've got really good patch management, so they're fully up to date on that. So you can drill right down if you want to from a technical point of view. If I have a quick look at the FAIR report before I come on to compliance, this is using the FAIR model, which is, we don't hide how we calculate this. It's very worth a Google if you want to Google the FAIR model, but it calculates a monetary figure based on the potential loss to an organization based on their cybersecurity posture. And for this organization, it's saying they have a 60,000 potential annualized risk is most likely, but their maximum loss magnitude is 3.2 million. So if I was dealing with this particular supplier, I'd want to make sure they had sufficient cybersecurity, or I had sufficient cybersecurity insurance to cover a potential loss of 3.2 million through that particular organization. And what it does, it's using the Ponemon Institute and the IBM cost of data breach to determine that on average, an organization like this would have 27,000 pieces of information about me if they're one of my suppliers. That there might be a marketing company that I'm sending my database to do marketing on, or a telesales company, or a legal organization where they've got 28,000 documents based around my customers that they've been helping with legal contract information. Could be a whole host of different types of information on them. But what you can do within the platform is you can quickly and easily change this information, and it will dynamically alter the score. So you might say, well, I don't have 27,000 items with that customer. They're one of my leading marketing companies. I have 100,000. Now, this figure here of $255 is immediately derived from the Ponemon Institute and the IBM cost of data breach, where they analyze 17 different geographies across 17 industries and thousands of customers data to get an average, thousands of data points to get an average cost of each piece of data and information if it was breached and leaked. And if you might have a figure that's a lot higher than that or a lot lower, and again, you can alter that. Now, if the organization is directly connected to your network, you can simply tick this box. So you might be sharing infrastructure with them. They might have a direct access into your environment to update systems and records, for instance. If you hit save, what it will do, it will dynamically recalculate it. So it took it from 60,000 up to a 306,000 potential loss through this particular supplier. Now, I will reset this. That's it, reset it to default, back to normal. What you can also do is look at contributing factors to it. Now, anything with I, we've already detected through the compliance framework. So we know that they have employee training because it's part of the NIST analysis that we've done and the ISO 27001 analysis. But you can go in here and you can tick whichever boxes they want. Or if you've got old questionnaires, you can import them into the system to update this information automatically. And that will give you the sort of fair analysis report. For anyone that's really into the maths, this tells you how the model is calculated against operational risk, and the formula is how it's calculated as well. So we're not hiding this figure. It's not a magic figure that we're just plucking out of the air. It's got logic, it's got research behind it, and it's got using the FAIR methodology, which is the only operational risk and financial impact analysis platform on the market. So let's just quickly go back and have a quick look at the compliance. So we'll look at the compliance of an organization. Now, we're looking at this from an external point of view. So we're looking for things on their website around privacy policies to update the GDPR. We're looking at whether they've got correct patch management, which has impact on NIST and also on PCI DSS, etc. And we're looking at 14 different frameworks. So the frameworks we're looking at are NIST, you can read these, ISO 27001, GDPR, PCI DSS, CMMC, HIPAA, as well as shared assessments. And what you can do is you can then drill down into it. Now, my pet one is ISO 27001. We do a lot of work around this with customers, helping them achieve ISO 27001 certification. So if we look at and drill down into ISO 27001, it shows you all the elements of ISO 27001. Shows what results we've got and how complete a picture. Because at the moment we're saying we believe they are 83% compliance, but we've only got a small 6% complete, which is not enough. From an external view, we're looking at that, but it's the completeness and how sure the platform is that this organization is ISO 27001. And if you want to, you can then drill down into each of the individual ways or individual elements of ISO 27001. So how do they access? Is there a documented access control policy, for instance? Now, if you've shared access to the platform, given them admin rights, that particular supplier might come on here and just mark that. Yes, we have excellent ways of doing that. But again, that's almost sort of aspirational. But what you can do with a platform is upload evidence. And what it will do is it will read the document and then update the framework, not only the framework that applies. So as I said, I think earlier on, if, for instance, they have their information and data security policy, or they have their gap analysis for PCI DSS, or they have their CMMC reports, or whatever the framework might be, upload this in there into the platform as evidence, and you'll get an audit trail of when it was done. And it will dynamically alter their score for ISO 27001. But what it will also do is alter their score for any of the other compliances where a clause within ISO 27001 is directly relative to a clause in PCI DSS or GDPR or NIST or HIPAA or whichever framework it is, which enables you to get evidential proof from your supply chain, import it into the platform. And again, the ramp service that we provide, we do this for you, or you can do it yourself. And it will then dynamically alter their compliance score and give you a better true figure for how compliant they are as an organization, which means it's very, very simple. But like I said, we don't expect you to go into this in a lot of technical detail. It's really about getting a simple view of your suppliers where you can quickly sort the suppliers by, I don't like the financial impacts, that's too high for me. Let's click, drill down, share that with the supplier, or get Data Shield to ramp that particular supplier as part of the service that's included within the license fees. Now, I know that's kind of a very, very speedy view of the platform, but we'll cover the sort of next steps at the end where you'll have the opportunity to have a more detailed drill down, which I promise I will bring somebody technical onto the call that can do it far, far better than me. But what I wanted to do is show you how simple and easy it is to rank your suppliers by the ones that potentially cause you the most damage or could cause you the most damage if they were breached, or that are most likely to be hit by a ransomware attack, identify them and do actions accordingly to help them improve their security, but ultimately reduce the risk to you. So if you just bear with me, I will just switch screen back onto here. So I've mentioned the ramp process before. It's basically trying to remove the overhead. It's about reducing your risk, improving your security. But the main thing is for you as a customer would be at the end. So at the start of the process, you will know, because we've imported all the supplies into the platform, what your total financial risk is, what your total score is for compliance, and what your total score is for technical, or what the ransomware susceptibility index score is across your entire supply chain average. What we do is you get reports at the beginning. This is where our benchmark, and then you also get reports at the end of the 60-day, which will show the difference between how your cybersecurity is improved, your financial risks have been reduced. And that's all part of the ramp process. One of the other services that we've just launched is a rapid ransomware assessment service. Now, this is delivered as a one-off professional services engagement to get a view of your entire supply chain. There is a minimum of 50 suppliers to start with on this particular process. We get you incredibly quick results. You get the full risk profiles and all the reports within 48 hours of knowing which ones of your suppliers are susceptible to a ransomware attack. You'll get their view of their cyber compliance and financial, like I've just shown you, and you get access to the platform for 60 days. And you can ramp the suppliers if you want to. It's not included free of charge on that. It's basically 20% of the service cost to ramp those suppliers on the ransomware assessment service. Now, this was designed and developed, and we're rolling this out at the moment for organizations that are maybe going through their TPRM strategy, trying to work out what the best way is to identify. But while they're going through that particular process, you want a rapid and simple way to assess the risks within your supply chain, to know what they are now, to help you build your TPRM strategy. So this is a very low cost way of getting at least that initial view of your suppliers, which ones are susceptible to a ransomware attack, who has the worst financial record, the worst cyber score, the lowest compliance. So at least you've got that benchmark that you can then start to monitor your suppliers later on. And then it can be extended, obviously, into a full TPRM strategy to continue using the platform afterwards. So if you're interested in this, we can obviously talk around that on a separate session, or I'm sure Andy will arrange follow-ups anyway. So why do anything? I suppose in simple terms, it is about reducing your risks. The risks from a financial point of view, a technical point of view, being hit by ransomware. But ultimately, it's about reducing costs. It's about improving the operational efficiency of risk assessing your suppliers, reducing the potential costs around breach remedies, GDPR fines, other data breach fines, or ransomware costs. It will give you that complete supplier risk profile across your entire supply chain in minutes and hours, as opposed to days, weeks, and months. And you get a detailed view of every supplier that you can drill down into to look at how is their patch management, what ports do they have open, what is their credentials like. But like I said, we don't expect our customers to do that. It's about sharing the information with your suppliers and giving them that way of doing it, which gives you a real optimal way of managing the risks within your supply chain and gives you that real risk maturity, that you know the risks before they happen, that you know that which one of your suppliers are susceptible to a ransomware attack that could potentially impact your business, cause you serious negative press, or cost millions or thousands in fines, lost business, lost data, etc. But I think one of the best ways of describing a platform is it really enables you to make true enhanced business decisions based on data, not on aspirational information that you've been given, but also giving you that continuous risk assessment. Because as we all know, vulnerabilities get identified, risks increase and decrease over time, new threats are coming out into the marketplace, and having that ongoing monitoring and alerting that only alerts you if there's a problem within your supply chain, again, goes back to that reducing cost, reducing the operational costs of managing risk within your third-party suppliers, let alone moving away from that traditional questionnaire approach. Now, there's a variety of different sort of next steps, and we'll sort of come to the Q&A in the next sort of couple of minutes if there are any questions. We can supply lots of different information. We've got data sheets, case studies, there's a variety of different white papers and reports. We can arrange a simple one-to-one demonstration with data from one of our technical staff that will enable a far more technical demonstration if you actually want to see it. However, I always think the best way, the Americans use the term drinking the Kool or tasting the Kool-Aid or something like that, but we can do a free risk assessment of one of your suppliers or partners. So if you've got a supplier or partner, I would recommend doing the risk assessment on a supplier and partner you know a lot about, or you think you know a lot about, rather than one that you know nothing about, because then you can validate the accuracy and the results from the platform against somebody you know. So to free risk assessment of one of your suppliers. If you're thinking about this sort of technology for your organization, but you want a proof of value to show it to the board, to show it to your stakeholders, or to other senior management within the organization, we can do a proof of value, again, free of charge, where we'll risk assess up to 5 of your suppliers and partners. And again, we recommend using a couple you know a lot about, a couple you know nothing about, or you know a little bit about, sorry, and one you know nothing about. And then we'll show you a risk assessment of each one of those, and we can drill down during a live demonstration of their particular risk assessment. Or if you're thinking, well, yeah, I like what I've seen today, it looks really good, and you want to do a proof of concept, there is a charge for this, but we can do a proof of concept ranging from 5 to 100 suppliers, where we'll just do a straight proof of concept. So it's entirely up to you, the sort of next steps. So I'm sure Andy and the team, myself, will reach out to determine if any of those next steps meet your requirements. But if there's another next step for you, again, feel free to let us know and we'll work around your sort of process as well. Questions? Right, let's see you.
Steve, thanks ever so much. Let me just go through some of the questions I can see, going back to the oldest ones first. So I think from the get-go, there is a sort of credibility question mark about how can it be that this platform can get so much information just by using a domain name. That's a fair point. I think we come across that pretty much every time we share this platform. Now, how does the platform assess the latest risk posture of the vendor if it does not connect to the vendor's infrastructure? The platform gets security information before it hits the media. Where it from? Obviously, a lot of this is down to open source intelligence feeds, etc., etc. But could you just quickly just reiterate how that happens? Because there's an awful lot of data that's received from the ether without actually talking to suppliers. It's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And we are gathering it from open source intelligence tools. We're gathering it from, and we actually publish what those open source intelligence tools are. Again, it's not hidden. It's not a black box solution where we don't tell you how we do it. And we can certainly send out a list to anyone that wants to know those particular third parties that we actually integrate with. We're also looking on dark web scanners for information around credentials and data leaks, and a whole host of open source intelligence tools. Now, being honest, you could probably subscribe and write scripts to go out and analyze a lot of these open source intelligence tools, but then you would not have the user interface, the workflow, the simplicity of using the platform. But there are also some paid for services that the platform pays for to get more valid information. But there, as you know, there are lots of organizations out there scanning the internet looking for vulnerabilities in the same way that the hackers do. And that's exactly what the platform is. But like I said, I'm not technical, so I don't know the exact names of all the scanners off the top of my head that we're actually using and all the open source intelligence tools, but I know it is documented and it's not a hidden area that we actually do. It's a very much an open book policy that we have with the platform.
And Steve, that would very much go back down to the question that's been asked about how would the platform know if the vendor's server is not patched or up to date. So again, open source intelligence tools.
Open intelligence tools, yeah, there is lots of open source feeds that are out there that are scanning the internet looking for servers that are not patch managed, and they're doing it for a variety of different reasons. One, I would imagine selling it to other IT companies that can then contact those organizations to say, we know your servers are not patch managed, or selling it as threat information to the organization so they can also know that they need to update and patch manage their servers, for instance. But again, it's all open source intelligence tools, hence why we don't need permission from the supplier or permission from the vendor, that we're actually risk assessing. All this is in the public domain if you know where to find it.
Excellent. Another good question here. Can you fine tune the compliance monitoring to meet the individual need of the customer? So risk appetite and security posture, which I believe you can, but I think it would be worth going back to that as well.
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
So can you customize the compliance monitoring to meet the risk posture, appetite or posture of the organization using the platform?
Yeah, you can set thresholds within the compliance that if you're not happy with it, it sets alerts. But the best way to use the compliance, like to give you an example, when I risk assessed myself, which is always a very scary thing to do, I noticed that my particular one of the elements of GDPR around privacy wasn't as high as I thought it should be. So what I did is I uploaded my privacy documentation into the platform, and then it read that and automatically altered it into the correct level. But you can set thresholds within the platform to send you alerts if somebody's compliance is not at a certain area, and it's a very quick way of scanning through it. There's also a full API to enable you to integrate into it. One thing I didn't show you, which I should have showed you, was the ability to export every single compliance in Excel format, so that you can then, if you want to, share that with a supplier for them to update it, to then reload it back into the system and do it. But that's kind of almost like doing questionnaire and automated, which I much prefer to put evidential proof into the platform, but it's just one of the features of it.
Excellent. Steve, another good question here. The market, who do we compete with on a regular basis, and how do we differentiate from those key competitors? What's the big differential there?
Right, there is a great webinar that actually Black Kite did last Thursday night at, I think, 9 p.m. I was watching it, which was around some of the sorts of key players in there. So you've got Security Scorecard, you've got Risk Recon, you've got a whole host of other security assessment suppliers. Now, a lot of them do similar things. The 100% uniqueness about the Black Kite platform is, one, the financial risk assessment. It's the only platform on the market that will automatically calculate what the probable financial risk is to the organization in the event of a breach of that particular supplier. And the ransomware susceptibility index. Those two are very, very unique. I think it's very hard. You know, I've spent many years working for large corporates, spent a long time at Vodafone, and we always used to talk about what is unique to us. And To be honest, there wasn't much unique, but with the Black Kite platform, it is 100% unique, the ransomware and the financial impact, because a lot of the other platforms on the market will say they're scalable, so do we. They will say they'll do a thorough investigation using open source intelligence tools, so will we. But it's around that uploading of the evidential proof, sorry, that's the next one, unique, into the compliance, the financial risk assessment, unique, and the ransomware susceptibility index, unique.
Thanks, Steve. And another competitor aligns with BitSight. The differentials are the same there with BitSight?
Yeah, exactly the same. Exactly the same. Now, there are financial benefits around the Black Kite platform, but I don't particularly want to talk around the sort of numbers and figures around that. And I've competed directly against BitSight before, and financially, we come out massively on top. But again, there are financial benefits to the Black Kite platform, but the main benefits are financial risk modeling, RSI, uploading of the evidence.
Steve, that's really, really good. I think we've just turned the hour now, and everybody's starting to leave the conversation. So thanks ever so much. You've talked for a long time. You probably need a good drink. Thank you to everybody that's turned up. We had lots of good commentary in the chat. Those that want to sort of pick this up with us, several do. We'll pick this up with you later, and just appreciate your valuable time on a Tuesday. Thanks ever so much indeed.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.